The element line. Line is one of the most important element of design. In fact, line is the genesis of all designs. Now there are a wide range of line characteristics. Wavy line, broken line, thin line, thick lines, or broad lines and thin lines, loopy lines, broken lines, dotted lines, zigzag or spiky lines, loopy lines. Broken lines are classified as dash lines. There are different ways of describing these types of lines. Lines can be drawn in arch, curves. As a matter of fact, lines are what we use to make letters and numbers. And most things have an outline. You have a spiral line. Now, all of these lines can be very, very essential to drawing and the different expressive forms. It is the foundation for all different art forms. So one has to study lines when you're doing art. You start out from basic doodling or scribbly scrabbly. Lines can be drawn vertically and lines can be drawn horizontally. Lines can go east to west, north to south, and in between. There can be a combination of diagonal lines, horizontal lines, and vertical lines. There can be a combination of thick lines and thin lines to create a design. There could only be a repetition of one characteristic of line, for example, one straight horizontal thin line, which is popularly known as stripes. These types of line designs are manifested in clothing and textile. That's a very, very popular expressive form that predominantly will show evidence of different types of lines. Now, lines are what we use to create shapes, and shapes are what we use to create an illusion of form with the combination of shading. Now, lines are what we use to create the different types of shading. And there are different types of shading. For example, what we're looking at here could be classified as hatching, if that was the objective. So we have to look at line from different perspectives. So lines could go in different direction, as was mentioned earlier. So we could have a combination of two lines, or as I said initially, we could have one line to create a design. Just repeat it, create pattern, which is repetition, similar to rhythm. So we could use a combination of thin lines and thick lines. So that would involve the principle of design, which is called contrast. Repetition, which is pattern, is also a principle of design, or could be said a principle of art. Now, principle in this context has to do with guidelines, or simply put, rules of art. So we could use the word interchangeable. Rules or principles. And some folks will go to the extent of saying laws of design, just like what you would say laws of physics. Same thing. That's the kind of principle that we're talking about. Principle governs. And if we follow the principles or the guidelines, we will get it right. But if we do not follow the principles, chances are we may come up with not the desired objective, which would probably be incorrect. And so that's why we follow these rules. Now, there are instances, I must say, that we break some of those rules of design and come up with some extraordinary discoveries. So there is also that factor. So we don't discourage creativity, we promote creativity. But we start by following those rules, and then we take responsibility for every line we make. So these are just simple arches repeated, and it looks like swells or vibration, or you can look at it from many different angles. But this is one type of line being repeated in space. Space is an essential element of design that we have to also take into consideration. So this is a two-dimensional space filled with arches repeated, and they start to look like form. So we can play around with negative and positive space as well. To make a simple design. So remember now, we create lines, then we create, and line may be classified as a moving dot, which means you pull that marking tool, whether it's a pen, pencil, charcoal, you name it, from point A to point B. Hence we create a line. So we use lines, then we create shape, and always remember, from lines to shape to an illusion of form. And in order to make your illusion more effective, we add shading, which shading is made up of lines as well. For example, hatching is a buildup of parallel lines going in the same direction. So we could probably view those lines that you're looking at right now, these same arches, as hatching as well. However, hatching is popularly known as some lines going straight or diagonal, or horizontal or vertical. They're going in the same direction. The closer you put them, the darker the area will be. Then we have cross hatching, which is a buildup of lines crossing each other, crisscrossing each other. So shading may be classified as toning or rendering. But in this context, we're just making simple designs using lines. We're not really looking at it as shading. To talk about shading, I will do other lessons. So this is just some examples of simple ways of utilizing the empty two-dimensional space with lines. So here is shading, the hatching, so in further lesson, I will share with you the shading techniques. Until next time, thanks for watching. Please remember to share, like, subscribe. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Or leave a comment. Bye.